Today we're breaking down MIDI CC data, what it is, how it works, and how to use it to bring your orchestral samples to life. So whether you're writing for strings, brass, or woodwinds, this is one of the most crucial things you can learn as a composer. I'm also going to show you my personal setup that I use for TouchOSC to control this data off an iPad. And if you'd like to get a copy of my custom preset that I'm using in this video, I'll have a link in the description below to get it in my shop for free. MIDI CC stands for MIDI Continuous Controller. Think of this as a stream of data you're sending to your sample library that tells it how to perform, how loud. The two you'll use most often for orchestral writing is going to be MIDI CC1 and MIDI CC11. MIDI CC1 is the mod wheel. This is the modulation wheel on most MIDI keyboards. It's going to be pre-assigned in a lot of libraries for MIDI CC1 because that's what most keyboards default to for that expression wheel. It's like telling the violin or cello player how hard or how soft to bow the instrument. MIDI CC11 is expression. This controls the overall output volume of the instrument in a more musical way. Think of it as the shape and swell of a phrase. So it kind of rides on top of MIDI CC1. When used together, these two controllers give you incredibly nuanced, expressive performances that sound like a real player is behind the instrument and not just a person with a sequencer and a MIDI keyboard. So I got a simple brass phrase here. Nothing fancy. It's like 8 bars. Right now, the MIDI CC lanes are completely flat. And this is what that sounds like. All right, it's pretty boring. So as you notice, MIDI CC11 and MIDI CC1 are not completely identical. So CC1 is your dynamic layer. It determines the character of the sound. CC11 is your expression, and that shapes the volume and feel. So they work together, but they serve different purposes. Common approach is to use like CC1 for a broad dynamic arc of phrase and CC11 for smaller, more detailed shaping. This phrase that we had earlier is already so much more musical. And an example of how they're different would be like on this last note, the player is actually a little more aggressive with the breath that they're giving it, but the note is actually getting quieter as they have these lower notes where they might be running out of air. The volume would decrease, but they would be probably forcing more air and playing more aggressively. So notice right here. All right, let's look at another example. Let's look at some strings. So first we're going to go in and we're just going to do the actual MIDI CC1 data, which is just the expression. All right, so now that we've got that, we're going to go in and do our MIDI CC11 data for the expression. So now a much more musical phrase. So one thing to keep in mind with all this is that while you can certainly go in with your pencil tool and draw the MIDI CC data however you want. Drawing the MIDI CC data is great, especially if you're trying to work out some details and fine tuning. If I felt like it got a little low, I could go in and fine tune this with what I've already kind of played and recorded in. The thing that I feel like is a little bit more powerful is when you're performing the CC data in real time using like a physical CC fader. Or in this case, I'm using, an iPad with a touchscreen. You can also use the mod wheel or any kind of sliders that you might have on your keyboard as well. You'll notice a lot of composers for TV and film, they'll typically have some kind of little, between like a 3 and 5, maybe even more fader kind of setup sitting at their desk pretty close to the keyboard. And that is because, especially like film and TV and game composers, there is so much data that we're manipulating in real time. It is just much faster when we can get to it and be tactile with it. So most MIDI keyboards do have a mod wheel for CC1, but it's not always the most comfortable or precise thing to use, especially if you want to control multiple parameters at once. Now, for me, sometimes I will actually control both at one time, but as we discussed, they're not the exact same. They should not just be. If you kind of notice right here, I'm moving CC1 and 11 at the same time. That's not going to be like a real player would play as well. So as we kind of mentioned, like in the brass example, CC1 and 11 are slightly different. And in my opinion, if you're wanting the most realism that you can get out of your orchestra sounds, your brass, your strings, you really need to customize each one. So to me, I feel like just having the expression CC1 and 11 move the same way, it's essentially just kind of giving you volume swells at that point. Right now, I am just using Albion 1. So if you notice, as I move my CC faders, I'm moving the dynamics and the expression on this particular plugin. So one is controlling this, one is controlling 11. And a lot of virtual instruments, you can right click it and change that or have it learn like a physical fader. So if I had a couple of faders, which I do, I just don't use them on my keyboard, and I wanted that particular fader to control CC1, I could right click with my mouse that parameter and then start moving, or I could click learn and then start moving that fader. That would then assign that fader. That's going to be kind of how it's set up with most developers nowadays. But again, for me, I like a really long throw versus the mod wheel. And that's where I like using this app called TouchOSC. This is just a really simple, I've got a couple different like presets that I use here for different things. I'm going to have a light version of this that you can download for free in my PayHip store. I'll put that link down below. But it really just kind of gives me access to the most kind of important parameters. Like I've got CC19 here that's controlling in this plugin the amount of reverb. This one right here is vibrato, so really smooth. And that fader is just volume. CC1 and 11 are the most common. I've also got this one set up for 19, 21, and 7. So that's how I've got this set up, and it works pretty well across all kinds of different software developers' platforms. I've even got a page on this particular one where, like, if I wanted to switch articulation sets, I could switch through that. So again, for me, like a typical workflow, we'll just go here and let me get rid of this, would be, if I've got my strings here, I would record in the passage first. And then I'm either going to do CC11 or 1. I know I did 11, or I'm sorry, I did 1 the first time. We'll go back and do 11. All right, now let's go in and do CC1. So let's see what it sounds like now. when they sample instruments for these libraries, they're expecting you to basically go in and do this. That's why they put so much time and energy into sampling so many different layers and round robins. So if you're not writing in this way, you're not basically using the tools the way they were developed for composers. If you go to my store to download my TouchOSC template, I've got 2 free ebooks I want to make sure you know about as well. Writing for Brass and Woodwinds. These books go deep on ranges, articulation, voicing, and common mistakes to avoid when writing for these instruments. They're completely free and a great companion to go with everything we've talked about today.